it's just a different party. It's a party that matters. It's a party where you're not getting drunk and, you know, trying to go home with a pretty boy or a pretty girl. You're coming to the party with a heart and a positioning that cares about others, that sees needless suffering in the world and says, I can reject the apathy that might be so easy to succumb to when it comes to any paralyzing global issue, and I could do something.
This week on the Courageous Podcast, we were joined by the founder of Charity Water, Scott Harrison, and he shared a pretty radical story of how he went from one end of the spectrum to the other and really found his purpose.
Yeah, I can't believe Charity Water's now been around for 15 years. Like the 15th anniversary is next year, but Scott took us back to when he was promoting nightclubs. In that moment where he was like, you know what, I'm not satisfied on the inside, and it's odd to see him go a little bit from like promoting nightclubs to promoting clean water, but how those skills actually translate from one to the other.
Yeah, he's recognized. I mean, he was Forbes 40 under 40, one of the fastest growing companies in America, and they're doing great things. But it all started with him just giving everything up and really just finding himself and finding something that he believed in and really making a big pivot in his life.
It was also cool to hear what's next for Charity Water, which we address later in the episode. Enjoy. We are here bright and early. I know this is typical for the California kids to say bright and early. It's 7 a.m. over here, but when Scott Harrison gives you 45 minutes, you take it. And so I'm taking our 45 minutes. How you doing, Scott?
Good to be here, man. Thanks so much.
This is a pretty big episode for you because you have a new mic you're playing around with, correct?
I do. You want to see it? Look at that.
Let's see this thing. Oh,
wow, the Scarlett Studio.
He sounds good. He sounds really good.
Yeah, we might have to get a couple of those.
Yeah,
it's funny. They start raising the prices of these things on Amazon. So we had a friend up here, and she was doing a podcast, and she let me use the mic, and then I think I paid double on Amazon what she paid for it 2 months earlier.
Hey, dynamic pricing, right? Way to go, Amazon.
Right.
So actually, the last time we spoke, you actually were gracious enough to come on our Courageous Action Chat, which is sort of a conversation in Zoom. Michael Thatcher was the CEO is the CEO of Charity Navigator, was there as well. And you had just moved to Pennsylvania. I mean, you were living in New York City. We were kind of at the beginning of quarantine, and I'm assuming you're in Pennsylvania still?
We are. We officially moved out of New York City. 26 years in New York City, and we're going to take a season in the country and expose our kids to a very different way of life.
How's it been so far?
They love it. I mean, we went from a 2-bedroom, 1,200 square foot apartment in Tribeca to a couple hundred acres and an old 1930s farmhouse with a pond and deer in the front yard. We saw a black bear in the backyard. Wow. It's my wife got 20 chickens. I mean, we're going for it.
I mean, do you miss the sushi?
I've really enjoyed the cooking and the grilling, and we've been eating some venison that's from the property. And I don't know if you know much about the Enneagram, but I've got some 7 in me, so I'm always open for new experiences and really trying to expose my kids to something very different than sirens and city living. So they're really enjoying it.
I think that's great, Scott. Can you just tell us a little bit, maybe take us back to what got you to New York in the first place?
Yeah, I moved to New York when I was 18 or 19, really as an act of rebellion against my very conservative Christian upbringing. My mom was an invalid from the time that I was 4. There was a freak accident in our family. There was actually a carbon monoxide gas leak in our house. And that just devastated her health, knocked out her immune system. So I grew up as a caregiver, really helping to take care of mom, going to church, didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't sleep around, didn't cuss. And then 19 happened, and I discovered this crazy place called Manhattan that was only about an hour and a half away, and just moved to the city. I was in a band at the time. The band broke up, but then I became a nightclub promoter. I wound up actually doing that for the next 10 years, working at 40 different top nightclubs in Manhattan, selling the $20 cocktails and $1,000 bottles of champagne to the models and celebrities and bankers. And lived a kind of fast life in New York, drove the BMW, had the silly watch and the grand piano in my midtown loft, and thought I was the man, flying around the world to Fashion Week and dating models that were on the cover of magazines, and partying with the the people who were in the magazines and on TV. And after about 10 years of that, I realized I was not the man. In fact, I was probably the worst man that I knew. I'd become a kind of hollow, selfish, degenerate version of myself, spiritually bankrupt, morally bankrupt. And the only thing I'd actually done for 10 years is just get people drunk and party. And I just, kind of had a moment of catharsis and a crisis of faith, a crisis of conscience, and wanted to make a life change, a radical life change. And that was at 28. And that eventually led me to sell everything I owned, leave New York City for a country in West Africa that I'd never even heard of before, called Liberia, and join a humanitarian medical operation that was sending a group of doctors and surgeons to post-war Liberia right after this terrible 14-year civil war had ended. So it was kind of an extreme life change, going from this very fast life in New York to a country with no electricity and no running water and no sewage system and one doctor for every 50,000 people that lived in the country. But then seeing the transformative, redemptive, important work that these volunteer medical professionals were doing, and that wound up being really the big change in life that I needed at the time.
I mean, that's such a major change and such a 180 and a big pivot. Two things. One, how long did it take for you to get out of this spiritual, emotional bankruptcy by giving back? And two, how do you make a decision like that? How do you face like such a big life decision and just get up and go? What did that do for you?
Well, I think it started with hating my current life and really, almost a rock bottom. And again, this wasn't a financial rock bottom. I'd been having some health issues, probably related to massive amounts of cocaine, even though the doctors couldn't really figure out why parts of my body were just going numb. Probably the most, 2 packs of cigarettes a day and, lots of, illegal drugs at the time. But I got to the point where I wanted the opposite of my life. And then I just tried to find the opportunity for that. And, to be quite honest, I mean, I applied to 10 different humanitarian organizations and only one took me. So I didn't have a lot of choice, Ryan. I just said, okay, if you'll take me, here I am. And, I could have wound up in Sudan or Cambodia or India or, really, really anywhere. And I think fortunately for me, I wound up in this amazing place, which at the time was the poorest country in the world. But I wound up surrounded by these compassionate, interesting, competent doctors and surgeons who were really bringing the best of themselves to serve others. And I just fell in love with maybe the radically opposite lifestyle or the radically opposite intention for life. If previously it was all about, the girls and the parties and the drinking and the, being seen at the right, in the right chair at some fashion show. These are people who cared about the exact opposite things. How many people could they help? How many people could they serve? How much suffering could they end? And, I had signed up for a year and then I just signed up for a second year. So it wound up being kind of this 2-year in between moment in my life from 28 years old to 30 that then led me to start Charity Water at 30. But I really never looked back. I mean, there was a very clear finite moment where I gave up all the drugs and the smoking and the heavy drinking and all that. I remember before so I was going to be living on a huge hospital ship. So this was a 522-foot converted cruise liner, a cruise liner that had been converted into a massive 42-bed state-of-the-art hospital with MRIs and CT scans and operating theaters, again, in a country where there was just no electricity. So you can imagine what the healthcare, it was just non-existent. So, you know, there was something, you know, prophetic or symbolic about the idea of walking up the gangway, you know, the gangway being lifted and entering my new home and then sailing away to a new continent and to a new life. So I went out with a bang. I think I smoked 60 cigarettes that night before, and I drank 8 or 9 beers and turned up with a hangover, apparently reeking of alcohol, when I surrendered my passport and became an official volunteer crew member. But then I just walked away from that, and it was surprisingly easy. I never smoked again. I never touched coke or gambled again, or you know, any of that stuff. We just kind of walked away from the former lifestyle and embraced the new.
I was going to ask you, like, but what was the club scene like over there? But maybe we won't go down that path.
No, there wasn't a club scene. I did actually, in Benin, West Africa, put on a jazz event. I met some amazing jazz musicians, and I brought them on the ship. And I put together a club event where there was a cover, and all the money went to help these musicians, and they were fantastic. So you know, much tamer, of course, Ryan. You know, there was you weren't even allowed to drink on the ship. I mean, it was a very very conservative environment. But I love that. It was really what I needed. And I think, just, you know, thinking of, I don't think of it as a courageous move. I think of it as you know, I didn't have many options, to be quite honest. I mean, I'd applied to a bunch of places, and one person said yes. And then I just did follow that opportunity. But I think one of the things that was really important in me changing my life so radically, and maybe walking away from this unbelievably hedonistic, selfish, sycophantic life of vice, was that my environment changed so dramatically. I'm not sure I would have been strong enough, you know, if I was just trying to do this moral, spiritual life change, but I was still partying every night. You know, I still had to fill up a club with 1,000 people between midnight and 4 a.m. So the change in environment couldn't have been more extreme. And, you know, I mean, this is a group of people that got up at 6 a.m. and prayed that God would give them the strength to compassionately help as many people as possible with their gifts. You know, I mean, I was going home at 6 a.m, or I was going to an after hours in my former life. So I think, you know, people ask me sometimes for advice, maybe, you know, I've hit rock bottom, or I hate my life. I'm like, I think the change of environment is really important. You know, if your friends are all out doing drugs, like, you need new friends if you want to stop doing drugs.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Someone once said to me, and I may have brought this on the show before, Ryan, but it takes you 40 years to figure out who you are, and the next 40 to be that person. And sometimes New York can speed you up. You know, I did 7 years in the city.
Yeah.
I never ran clubs, although some of my friends, I definitely did a little bit of clubbing, that space. But like you did, you had a whole life. You had a whole life in the city, and here you are. And so as you go into this new life, and is it just like you're 30 years old and you're going, why not me? Or like, this work is important, and why charity water for you?
Well, I came, you know, I saw a lot of stuff when I was in Liberia. I spent time in a leprosy colony, and I saw people with missing faces, flesh-eating disease, you know, horrible disfiguration from rebel soldiers who would pour oil, you know, over children, trying to fuse body parts together. I mean, I saw unthinkable horrors and suffering, really surrounded by, with kind of a medical lens or a medical context. But one of the things that just stuck with me was seeing children drink dirty water from swamps. You know, I grew up in New Jersey. You know, there were ponds around us, and it never occurred to me to walk into a green, slimy, you know, bug-infested swamp and start drinking the water. And I learned that half of the country didn't have clean water to drink. And then I learned that half of the disease, half of the sickness in the country was because of that, because people didn't have clean water and the lack of sanitation. So I really came to the issue of water, or it came to maybe try to tackle the water crisis through this medical lens. And the chief medical officer just said to me simply one day, he said, if you really care about health, you're not going to help us raise the next 80 or 90 million dollars to put another hospital ship in the water that can help thousands of people a year. You'd go bring millions of people clean water, and therefore bring health to millions of people. So he really challenged me to tackle this bigger global health issue, which at the time there were 1 billion people on the planet, 1.1 or 1.2 billion people on the planet. It was 1.2. 1.2 billion people on the planet at the time that didn't have access to clean water. A shocking statistic.
It's crazy because, I mean, I think being born here, you take that for granted, right? We're very lucky and very privileged to have the things we have. And you put yourself in this new situation, new environment, and you see a need. So what has that entire process been like in bringing Charity Water to life? And it's been 15 years now, right? Or 15 years
We're in
plus.
14. Yeah, close.
14. Okay. So, I mean, from day one to now, what's that entire process been like? Has it been fast? Has it been slow? I'm sure it's been hard. I'm sure there's been ups and downs, but can you just share a little bit about, having a passion like that and chasing it and what that's been like?
That's a big question. I wrote 200,000 words on that my editor turned into 100,000. Yeah, I mean, look, at the beginning, I just had no idea what I was doing. And I think the naivety and the idealism really served me well. I was a 30-year-old kid, hot off this 2-year experience in West Africa, surrounded by amazing humanitarians. And I thought I could be one. I could change the world. And I had, maybe 40 or 50 years left that I could throw, 40 or 50 years of energy and intention that I could throw at a problem. And I picked a big problem, water. And then, I don't know, like most entrepreneurs, you just start. I was listening to some of the master scale episodes recently, and it's amazing how small, the Airbnbs or the Ubers of the world, start, or the Casper. You sell one mattress, or you rent out your couch. And, for me, it was throwing a party and asking people to give $20 to build a well. And that's all I knew at the time. So I knew this new hot club that was opening up. It was Fashion Week. I got the owners to give us the whole club for free, then give us open bar as a way of luring people there. And then 700 people came, and they gave $20 to the door, a little more, some of them. And we had $15,000 at the end of that. And we took the $15,000 to a refugee camp in northern Uganda. And we did our first couple of wells. And we sent the photos and the GPS coordinates and video of clean water flowing because of $20 donations. And we sent it back to everybody that came to the party and said, you came and you did this. This happened. And that's such a simple idea as closing the loop or showing people where their money had gone was actually powerful. And it was actually something that people did not get from most charities. They didn't get this kind of immediate cause and effect loop. And we said, well, with technology, we should just be able to do this. If we build wells, let's take photos of every single one of them. Let's post satellite coordinates of every single well on Google Earth and Google Maps so people could see the actual pictures of the well from satellites as they're built, to just know that the money is actually going into the ground, that it's accomplishing something. So a lot of the early ideas of Charity Water, which later proved to be unique or maybe even competitive advantages, the 100% model, this proof this promise that 100% of all donations we would ever collect from the public would go directly to fund the water projects. That was just in response to me talking to a bunch of people that didn't know where their money went when they gave to charity, and thought that too much was going to overhead and to pay CEO salaries or office costs or, business class flights around the world. And I said, well, what if we just said that 100% of your money went to build the water projects and help people get clean water. And we promised to prove it. Would you give then? People said, yeah, that sounds amazing. So, again, these ideas were not kind of master plans or, any sort of, there was no business plan. We just tried stuff. And then we said, all right, well, okay, now who's going to pay our overhead? Because someone is going to have to pay the salaries and someone's going to have to pay for the Ethiopian Air flight and the office one day. And then we started going to wealthy entrepreneurs and business leaders and say, you know the value of great team members and great talent. Will you help me hire my first water engineer? Will you help me hire my first web developer? Will you help me hire, our first accountant or CFO? And it just really organically evolved. And, so if you fast forward 14 years later, I mean, now, we raised $90 million last year. The org's about to close in on $500 million raised or given by over 1 million generous people from 140 countries around the world. So it's, it's obviously evolved into something, but those core principles at the beginning that we almost lucked into are still true today. We still have 2 separate bank accounts that are audited by KPMG every year. And the way that we pay for our overhead and, what's last year was almost 100 staff salaries, 136 wealthy donors, wealthy families and entrepreneurs. And then that allows 1 million people to give into the water account and have all that money go directly to water projects. We're still proving every water point, 14 years later, but now we've gone farther by putting GPS trackers on our drilling rigs and putting our rigs on Twitter and developing remote sensors, connecting wells to the cloud so they can self-report their functionality and how much water is flowing. So the ideas have maybe just been iterated on over, a decade plus with trial and error and with feedback. But, it's not that we really didn't do anything revolutionary. We just said, tell people where their money's going and they'll want to keep giving if they can see that their money is actually changing people's lives.
I don't mean to be cute when I'm saying this. I actually mean this, but I'm curious to get your take on this. I mean, in some ways, do you still feel like you're throwing the world's biggest club party? It just happens to be for good, and you're using all the skills you've learned in marketing, and you're applying that to this arena. And when I think of like Ronos and that arena, I just feel like they're so far behind on the marketing side. Do you feel that way at all?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I love that analogy, and I've thought of that. Or the opportunity. I mean, we are inviting people to a party of generosity, of compassion. We are inviting people to bring the best parts of themselves to this party, which is a party that is ushering in a day when the entire world gets clean and safe water. And we're celebrating these wins together. We're celebrating the members of the community. We're celebrating the 6-year-old kid who mailed us $8.15 of her allowance with a little note that says, I don't want children to die of bad water. We're celebrating the 89-year-old woman who donated her birthday and said, I've lived 89 years. I just want to make that possible for more people around the world. And I want to donate my birthday to help people. So it's absolutely a party. It's funny thinking about the spring, and maybe we'll talk about this later, but the spring is our community of monthly subscribers, of monthly givers. So, in the same way that you might pay every month for Netflix or Spotify or Dropbox or Amazon Prime, we have a community now of over 52,000 people that show up every single month, giving 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 a month, whatever they can for clean water. And they show up consistently and loyally. And, I was just trying to imagine the other day, it's about 2.5 Madison Square Gardens full of people. So we've now filled up my local stadium in New York so if we invited them all to an event, I would need 2.5 stadiums to kind of contain the generous people that have said yes to clean water. And that was, 25,000 people 18 months ago. So they would have fit in, they would have just overflowed one. So I do think about that. Like it's just a different party. It's a party that matters. It's a party where you're not getting drunk and, trying to go home with a pretty boy or a pretty girl. You're coming to the party with a heart and a positioning that cares about others, that sees needless suffering in the world and says, I can reject the apathy that might be so easy to succumb to when it comes to any paralyzing global issue. And I could do something. I could give 30 or 40 bucks a month. I could build a well. I could donate my birthday. I could run a marathon and raise some money for this cause.
So, by the way, I should have said this, and this won't mean anything to our audio listeners, but I'm actually wearing Charity Water swag right now. I'm not sure this is.
Oh, nice. Oh, that is a comfortable. I don't think you can get that anymore.
I love
I don't even have one of these. This bothers me. I never, through the years, kind of kept our early merch. I don't know that you can get that anymore, and it's the softest thing. And
the best.
I don't know.
Send this back to you. Don't make me do it. I'll do it.
No. We can make more. I feel like I should have a little box of swag through the last 14 years, but I'm not very sentimental.
Everywhere people read this everywhere I go. Seriously, and I do. I wear it a lot, which is odd that you'd think you'd be wearing sweatshirts in San Diego.
I mean, our merch loses a few $1,000s every year because we just give it away. But it's we hear stories of that, people at the gym wearing a water T-shirt and starting a conversation. So thanks for using it to be an ambassador.
Oh, of course. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you, so we're obviously living it through this pandemic, which is one of the reasons you moved to Pennsylvania. And I don't know,
this all day, like all of us.
Has your mission changed a little bit? Because it used to be about clean drinking water, and now every day we're told, wash your hands.
Yeah.
How does that play into all
that? Yeah, sure. I mean, look, that's again, such a multifaceted question. I mean, I can start with fundraising. I mean, fundraising has definitely taken a hit. Economic uncertainty is bad for fundraising. We lost millions and millions of dollars of corporate donations. Many of our brand partners, with businesses that themselves have been shut down completely for 3 or 4 months. Many major donors pulling back on multi-million-dollar giving just due to the uncertainty of their stock prices going forward, their donor advised fund, wanting to just be a little more cautious. I will say the most encouraging thing has actually been the growth of the spring. So as we've been losing huge corporate donations, even more people have been stepping up at $30 or $40 a month. Not quite enough to make up for that gap, but that group of committed, generous people, like the ones listening, has really been helping us kind of work towards this gap during the pandemic. Okay, now I'll kind of shift to the field. So that's fundraising. In the field, clean water is literally the first line of defense against the spread of COVID. And Charity Water works across 20 plus countries. We have 44 local partners. We employ over 1,300 locals through our partners in each of these countries. And the stories that have been coming back, I've been on the phone with Nepal early in the morning, with Uganda, with Rwanda, just to give you a sense, we talk a lot here about hospital capacity and do we have enough ventilators or PPP? There's not a single ventilator in some of these countries. Not a single, forget about capacity. There's no capacity to handle, a problem like this. So that's why the prevention has been so important. So across our portfolio, we've seen a mix. We've seen some partners just locked down with the whole country. No one's allowed to go anywhere, stay at home. In many other countries, though, we've seen our partners effectively transition to become frontline healthcare workers using water and teaching social distancing. So in Ethiopia, our partners have been going out to charity water wells, building hand washing stations, teaching the community the importance of washing their hands in a very different and new way, and then how to socially distance when they come to get water every day at the water point. So we've got these really cool photos coming back from Ethiopia of women, queued up, sitting on their yellow jerry cans 6 feet apart, waiting to use a hand washing station right next to the well. So I think, from an awareness, water has seen a lot of energy and traction over the last 14 years. 14 years ago when I started and I was talking about people not having clean water, I mean, I'd get looked at like I had 9 heads. This is just not a problem that affected us. We have a little more of awareness now. There's been Flint, Michigan. There's been the drought in South Africa and India and, California's water challenges. So I think we're starting to have a little more awareness that this is an issue we need to pay attention to. Maybe this isn't something we just take for granted for the rest of our lives. Oh, and by the way, now 785 million people don't have water. So 1/10 of the planet is actually not just living with kind of water scarcity issues, but drinking dirty water today, drinking water that could kill them and kill their children of preventable waterborne diseases. So I think the pandemic has helped elevate people's appreciation of water as a resource, water, and just with a different spin on it. Water is a way to protect ourselves and keep ourselves healthy. I don't know about you. I mean, my family, I've got young kids, 4 and 6. I've got a wife. I've got her mom living with us and her grandparents and my dad. And, we just kind of brought everybody out of New York City in the epicenter and said, let's, we're going to be working remotely anyway. Let's not do it in a 2-bedroom apartment. Mm-hmm. Since we have all been washing our hands, and now my kids just wash their hands like crazy, we haven't gotten as much as a cough or like temperature in 4 months. I mean, it's the healthiest our family has ever been. My kids would come home from school sick all the time. There was always something running around. We would get a 24-hour stomach bug, or somebody's got a running nose, or somebody's coughing, sneezing. I mean, I actually think, that's kind of an unintended consequence of practicing really great hygiene, is that we're really healthy. That, and obviously they're not in a little petri dish in New York City public school. Yeah. So I think people are thinking about water a little more today, a little differently. And our message is just, it is needed now more than ever before for the 785 million people that don't have it. So please join Charity Water, as we've now got 14 years of experience and 51,000 completed, or water projects completed and in progress across 28 countries for 11 million people. So we actually know how to do this. I heard a venture capitalist once, a guy named Chris Sacca, who was explaining Charity Water to a friend. And he's like, just give them your money. They just have this machine that turns it into clean water for people. And it's obviously not that simple. We fund 13 different technologies across the portfolio, and we drill wells and dig wells and build $1 million gravity fed systems and $65 bio sand filters and rainwater harvesting systems in Rajasthan, India. So there's a lot of different ways to deliver clean and safe drinking water, but it often does seem so simple. I've been to Ethiopia 30 different times, and every time I see $1 million drilling rig come in and, a bunch of guys and gals jump off of the truck and start looking, basically stick a hole in the ground, drill 200 feet underneath the village that's never had water before, hit a massive aquifer, and then build a well in a couple of days. You're like, was it really that easy? 10 grand, $12,000, the cost of a nice watch. And 300 people now have a sustainable source of clean water. So, I would hope that this would make our work easier going forward, or would win even more people over to the importance of water for all humans, regardless of where they were born.
Well, again, I think you're saying, it's funny to say it's that simple, but I know you don't mean it. And actually, I've had great conversations with one of your team members, Christoph Gorder, I love the guy. He's very easy to talk to. And we were talking about how 1/3 of water systems are fragile systems and are down at any moment in time. So you actually need that technology to sort of in real time predict which water systems are going to go down. Because if water system's down, there goes your clean water system. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's closer to 10%, but that's right. So kind of think of a well specifically, and I'll just talk about one technology. A well is like a car. It's going to break down, and you're going to need to change the muffler. You're going to need to change the oil. You're going to need to rotate the tires or put on new tires. But if you take good care of it, it can last 25, 30 years. You know, my wife's grandparents drive a 22-year-old car, and the thing has 290,000 miles on it. And I think grandfather is actually out right now washing the car by hand and talking to it. I mean, he loves this thing. You know, he wipes it down. We tried to bring him a hose the other day. Doesn't want the hose on his car. You know, I mean, the thing's probably worth $200 on the used market. But again, he has taken care of this asset. You know, he's an 80-year-old man. This is how his generation thinks about things. You know, my generation might think like we lease a car every three years, and like it's their problem. You know, so that's a big part of our job is working with our partners to train communities on how to protect, to preserve, to maintain this asset over time that is a life-giving asset, that is keeping the children in the village healthy, that is providing economic opportunity for the women, because when they have the well, they don't have to walk 6 hours to the faraway swamp or river. Well, you do the math of 6 hours a day times 7 days a week, because fetching water is not a Monday to Friday gig, right? You don't get water on Saturday. You don't drink on Saturday. So you gave a woman 42 hours back in her week, and amazing things start to happen. She starts selling things at the market. She's got a produce stand. She's spending more time with her family, with her children, with her community, leading the community forward. So that's why it's so important that we keep these systems running. So one of the things I mentioned earlier, you know, we've really been working with a bunch of labs. We got a $5 million grant from Google to effectively create a smart well, which will notify local technicians when a well is down. They can then go out and make that repair, you know, with a very quick response time. So the environment we're moving towards, and again, you know, we're not there yet, and there's a lot of work to be done. But you know, imagine if you were living on the Eritrean border of Ethiopia and you dropped your iPhone and the glass shattered, and then the next morning, a little moped turns up in your village, and it's a guy with Apple Care shirt on, and he says, "Hey, our sensors told us, Ryan, that you broke the glass on your iPhone. I'm here to fix it with the glass kit, and I need $50, please." You know, that's what we're trying to do with this technology in this loop, where a well breaks, a technician's alerted, heads out there with the tools, and then the community itself pays for that repair. So it's sustainable, not us and not our donors.
So Scott, you went from nightclubs to $5 million Google grants, and now you're an author. And Berman's gone through this process too, of writing a book. I think a lot of this is about just education and awareness, right? And so what was that book writing process like? How has that been for you? And are people picking it up? What's the response been? It's a bestseller, correct?
Yeah. It debuted on the New York Times bestseller list, and we're very fortunate. It's sold very well. I mean, gosh, people ask me a lot, are you going to write another book? I'm like, no. It was a 2-year process. I worked with an amazing woman named Lisa Sweetingham in LA, in the Palisades. And it was a 2-year process where, oh gosh, she would interview me for dozens and dozens and dozens of hours. And I would kind of speak out the chapters and experiences. And, you know, she would write a first draft and I would look at it and say, no, I want to completely rewrite the whole thing. And then her editor would say, well, we don't even think this is interesting. Start over. She came with me to Uganda. We spent a lot of time together in the back of Land Rovers. And it was a great experience having kind of, you know, someone to help me organize the thoughts and create a, hopefully what was a compelling narrative while I was still running an organization that was growing 40% a year and, you know, hiring dozens of new people every single year. And I was doing 80 flights during these years that I was writing the book, just out there speaking in Africa, in India, in Asia, you know, working with our local partners and out there telling stories and such. So, you know, one of the things that was important to me was not to make any money off of my life story or the, you know, the organization. So, you know, I wound up, you know, turning the entire Penguin Random House advance over to Charity Water, all my author proceeds domestically. And then I said, well, I might as well give everything away internationally when the book started getting translated. So that's the idea, is that this is a vehicle to help people maybe who feel stuck, who feel lost, who maybe had maybe not a radical nightclub degenerate experience, but you know, wake up saying, I'm not living my potential. I want a life of more purpose. I want to be able to help others with the gifts that I've been given. And, I guess my hope on a personal level was that if you read that, if I can do it, or if it wasn't too late for me, it's definitely not. I mean, maybe unless you're a murderer, like a serial killer. I just believe it's never too late for people to change, and your past doesn't need to define your future. In fact, all the mistakes of your past can turn into power as you move forward. And then, the second purpose of the book was just to tell a bunch of stories of my experiences traveling across 69 countries and coming face to face with the water crisis and the solutions, and really just get people excited and energized about the possibility of solving this problem in our lifetime, of actually bringing everybody in the world clean water. Even the beauty of the issue, and I think what energizes me still 14 years later, is that we know how to help every single human get clean water. So of the 785 million people right now that are drinking dirty water, there's not one person anywhere in the world where we would scratch our head and say, we just don't know how to help them. Well, we just have to leave them drinking dirty water. Now, unlike the vaccine for COVID-19, we got like tens of billions of dollars being invested, the smartest minds from every country in the world. And will we get there? Probably, maybe. To what degree of effectiveness? We actually don't know definitively that we can solve this problem. We do know that we can solve the water crisis. So yeah, the book is called Thirst. It's, again, all the proceeds go to charity water, and there's a lot more stories, and there's a lot of just boneheaded mistakes we made. I wanted to be transparent. I wanted to talk about some of the things that didn't go well that you might not have seen from the outside. So there's wells gone dry, there's public humiliations, there's a lawsuit that happened. I mean, it's a deeper dive into the perils maybe of building a $100 million a year organization. But again, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people, are reflecting on what they're doing with their life, and just being in this current situation and environment is challenging. And you went through your own personal challenges. So just a piece of advice to people who are thinking about making a big change like you did, and maybe wanting to get involved and give back. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, this feels like the perfect time to make changes. I mean, you kind of get a free pass during 4 months of, quarantine and COVID-19 and a global pandemic. It's a great chance to try new things. I'll just give you one example. I mean, Charity Water has a beautiful 25,000 square foot headquarters in Tribeca. We have a virtual reality room. We have 10-foot light boxes. We got over $1 million donated to build out our headquarters from Samsung and from contractors and Steelcase. And we're walking away from our office, and we're going to go fully remote through 2021, and then try to reinvent or reimagine what it might look like for Charity Water to take a physical space. We're looking at ground floor retail. We're looking at galleries that might have gone under. We're looking at pop-up shops and exhibitions that might have a mix of team members working and also the public engaging with our stories, and donation platforms. So will we succeed? Will any of this stuff be cool or work? I honestly have no idea, but it's a great time to walk away from an expensive real estate market in New York, especially with so many of our employees now having left New York, working remotely and working honestly quite efficiently remotely. We polled our staff and said, who wants to go back in the office full time? 6%. 42% said we want to stay fully remote. We're happy never to go back into the office again. About half we'd like a hybrid approach. We'd like to do, a couple days of autonomous work online, and then we'd like some collaboration spaces. So again, I think that's just a moment for reinvention. So whether you're trying to reinvent your life or your business, never waste a crisis, I think somebody said. And it may not work, but you're certainly going to get a lot of grace because you did it during this moment.
So obviously, you didn't think you'd be like in a pandemic year approaching
No,
the
oh my
15th
gosh, we're going to have
anniversary.
our first 105 million, $100 million plus year this year, and we're going to help over 1.5 million new people get clean water. So no, this is definitely took us by storm. But again, the team is resilient, passionate, committed, and we're just looking for opportunities. And I think the spring is just one. Being able to I'm being able to do more of this. I'm speaking to a 2,000 person church next in San Francisco. It's 2,000 people who could show up every single month for clean water. So I'm getting just a different set of opportunities to talk about this issue. More people are reading. I've had more people write me that have been reading the book recently, and so we're trying to stay optimistic and hopeful and look for the good.
Do you feel like you've been at it for 15 years too? Is there anything else, like, you don't have to share it, but like, is there something else in your mind, like, I want to eventually get to do that, or at some point want to move out of the CEO role and to do something else?
I've certainly had job opportunities that would have paid millions and millions of dollars, over the years. I'm really not motivated by money. The more money I would make, the more money I would give away. So that's not really attractive to go and 10x a salary, or hit the lottery in some fast growing tech company that's going to IPO or sell or be acquired. So those are most of the opportunities that have come in over the years, and they're just very easy to say no to. I think about it for about half a second and say, no, I love what I'm doing. Would my role change at some point? It already has. I'm involved in much less of the day-to-day operations. I've got an amazing COO, Lauren Letta. She's been working with me for 9 years. We have an amazing CFO, Aditi Deeg, and she's leading the finance and the auditing and the compliance and like all this stuff that I'm not even good at. Christoph, as you mentioned, we've been working together for 7+ years. He's leading the global programs. So I'm already kind of in the ambassador, creative, inventor role by design, which took a long time to get there. So I'm not, I don't have a bunch of one-on-ones on my calendar, which you wouldn't want to do a one-on-one with me. I'm just, I'm not a very good manager. But I do have a bunch of creative brainstorms on my calendar, which I get excited, and I get to talk to people like you and to new audiences and diverse audiences around the world. So no, there's really no plan to do anything else. I've toyed around with the idea of doing a kid's book at some point. I've got a 4 and a 6-year-old, and so little kind of side projects.
I knew there was another book. I knew there was going to be another book.
I don't know. A kid's book feels accessible. Probably very different than Thirst, but I don't know. We got 20 chickens at the moment, so I'm kind of enjoying, the life's simple pleasures of. I bought 2 books on beekeeping yesterday. How hard can it be to have some bees in the backyard and give some honey away to my friends? I don't know. So I'm kind of exploring maybe smaller. I'm just enjoying being in nature and walking among trees and floating down the Delaware River on a Sunday with the kids, and just being away from kind of the noise and the bustle. And Ryan, I was going to JFK every 3 days. So 85, 90 flights every single year. And the 4:30 a.m. wake up calls to get on the, 5:45 or 6 a.m. flight to try to make it home to take my kids to school. I'm really enjoying just being home, sleeping in my own bed for a while.
Yeah, and I don't miss the flights. I really don't. I miss the missions.
Or the Marriott hotel, right? The Hiltons and the Marriotts, and gosh, my wife used to think it was. Christoph and I joke about this. Our wives would just think it was so glamorous. Like we're out at, I don't know, we're in, Dhaka, Bangladesh, and we would just send our wives. We have this string of. I actually forget what the hashtag is. It's like having fun on the road or something of like, the two of us, me sleeping on the floor, in some single room on a cot. And like, I get the floor on Monday and then I get the bed on Tuesday and he gets the floor, so it's not a very glamorous life on the road as you know.
Yeah, but what you're doing is amazing. And however we can help, we will continue to support you guys. And again, the book's called Thirst. By the way, I did not give any of my proceeds back. I feel like a terrible person.
Well, that's all right. You're not running a humanitarian organization, Ryan, so it's okay. Your family is important. Nobody's expecting you to. And we encourage people to check out thespring.com. That's probably the single easiest way to just begin engaging with Charity Water. You can become a member in less than 15 seconds, and we're building some really cool tools and dynamic products. We're hosting a Zoom call tonight with hundreds of our spring members, of our newer spring members, really get initiated with Christoph's team and the details of the programs and just Q&A. So we're really trying to build a vibrant community of people and take the opposite approach of what a lot have done in the sector, which is set it and forget it. Get you to give monthly to the charity and then just make it impossible for you to cancel and hope you forget. We're doing the opposite. We're really trying to win your support every single month with stories of impact, community events, new products that we're rolling out, just on your login pages and impact and all that kind of stuff. So check out thespring.com if you're interested in learning more about our work, and it's an easy way to help.
Well, we really appreciate the time, Scott, and for sharing it. Anywhere else that the audience can follow, Instagram, Twitter, any handles you want to share?
Just my name and Charity Water, but follow Charity Water. It's more interesting than me.
Cool. Well, we appreciate it. We'll let you get back to the chickens.
And the beef.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks, Scott. Take care, buddy. Next week on the Courageous Podcast, we're joined by Navy SEAL Jeff Boss.
If you enjoyed the episode, please give us 5 stars, subscribe, and leave us a comment.